Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Guest List podcast. I'm your host, Steve Guest. For those of you that haven't listened to an episode of this podcast before, a bit of an intro. It was born out of the success of my first book, Top Bill of the Life of a Recruiter. And I was getting asked lots of questions. I was getting lots of emails and direct messages with questions, scenarios, and requests for information. And I couldn't get back to them all. So I thought, what better way than to share some value, some knowledge, get far more successful and intelligent people on as guests and get them to share their value to you, the listeners. Podcast is centered around high performance, top billers, motivational leaders, inspirational coaches, mentors, managers, looking to add value in pretty much everything we do in all shapes and forms. And today's guest is no exception to that. Really looking forward to having a chat and going through various questions. I'm going to jump straight into the bio of today's guest. So today's guest is the leading expert in recruitment pricing and works with industry leaders around the world to create effective pricing and negotiation strategies. Today's guest has 17 years experience in the recruitment industry and was previously head of pricing at Reed Recruitment. His biggest pricing fear is running a taxi meter in a traffic jam. I love that. Jon Brooks, welcome along.
Hi, Steve. Great to see you.
How are you? You good?
Very good. Yes, it's pouring down outside. I hope the rain doesn't become part of the podcast.
Seriously, I mean, it is grim today.
Yeah.
It's that kind of, it's wet, it's dreary, it's where we are, it's misty and foggy, and there's just that kind of it's just, I don't know, what's the word? Miserable.
Autumn. That's the word.
Well, we can cheer it up, can't we? With
Yes, let's bring some sunshine.
conversation on pricing and negotiation.
Exactly.
Well, talking from, I suppose, a strategic and qualified buying background, this is a subject I hold dear because I love negotiation. I love the idea on pricing, and I'm really keen to get your ideas and views on it. Before we get kind of started in the nitty-gritty, just give us a bit of an overview in terms of what's got you to here, what's got you through the journey that you've been on. How's it all kind of come together?
Yeah. Well, way back when started with Reed Recruitment. I was on their grad scheme, which was really nice. 3 very different roles that you got a kind of unique experience with them. And actually, my second position there was working with the founder, Sir Alec Reed.
Okay.
So that was just an apprenticeship from heaven. Learned so much from him. He'd been running the business for over 50 years by that point, I think.
Okay.
So he just had so much experience, and I kind of sponged up as much as I could. And that was great. And he just continually came up with these ideas, and I was the one who would try them.
Okay, amazing.
Some of them worked, lots didn't. That's the idea with innovation.
Well, I say there's a lesson in there anyway, isn't there?
Yeah. So that, fairly early on in my career, that just set me up.
Yeah.
And gave me a great view of recruitment that obviously most people don't have.
Yeah.
I guess from that start, I hope I proved myself, and then I got to run different parts of Reed. So set up different services, so created different services for consultants to sell, ran their marketing team for a bit, and then most relevant to what I do now, I was head of pricing. Now, what that meant was we decided to have a big pricing transformation, so a strategic change in how we did, how we approached and priced our services. Now, that's a pretty bold thing for a big recruitment agency to do, make such a big change. And as you know, as everyone listening knows, recruitment pricing traditionally has pretty much always been the same. But we got some experts in. I led it internally, and we changed the approach, and it made such a big impact. I mean, I'd done all these different things, and nothing had made the impact that this strategic pricing change had made. So eventually, I'd always wanted to set up on my own, and actually, I'd been given loads of opportunities in Reed, so didn't. But eventually, I did, and thought, well, there's nothing again more impactful than strategic pricing and applying these methods and theories to recruitment. And it's not happening at the moment. So actually, why don't I help people? So 3 years ago now, set up my own business, as you say, helping recruiters to look at their pricing differently. And what that means, just very briefly, is understanding what their value is to their clients. Of course, putting the right price on it, but communicating that value and justifying that price, and then negotiating effectively so that you don't have a well-priced service that ends up with 30% off every time.
Of course.
Related to that, your retainers and the way you work and engage clients comes into that. We might get into this later, but contingent is not the most effective business model out there. So helping people with that as part of their bigger pricing strategy is pretty important as well.
I think one of the biggest struggles, so we've been in recruitment a similar amount of time, really. And I mean, if I even go back prior to recruitment, I used to sell my own artwork.
Right.
And I would do my own I'd paint canvases. It started when somebody wanted, they were going to pay £300 or £400 for these 3 canvases that all flowed together. And they were going to pay a small fortune. And I said, don't pay that. I can do that for you. Just buy the supplies, buy the material, I'll do it. And I did it. And the person was reasonably happy, I think. And they ordered another painting. And then one of their friends ordered another painting. And then it progressed and it slowly got a bit bigger. Then I started to open an eBay shop and I was selling kind of the samples whilst doing and I think the biggest and most difficult thing was to put your own value on the time that you spend to then put an end price on a product. And I think whilst I'm going back prior to recruitment, I think even now when I talk to recruiters, when I talk to recruitment businesses, the biggest struggle people have is in value and price when they're trying to put that on their own efforts or what work they do as an individual, and then to have comfort or confidence in that it's fair or reasonable. I mean, where do you start with all that? Because it's really complicated.
I find it incredibly fascinating. As you say, pricing is very arbitrary. You could price anything. Art is a great example that, of course, I could go down to a local shop and pay, I don't know, a few quid in a charity shop for a pretty painting. Or, I think a Lowry just went for £8 million.
I haven't done any Lowrys just yet.
You should you should get into that.
Mine are in the charity shop, I would think.
Right. But so what is the value of a piece of art? It's clearly not in the time it takes to create it.
No.
So it is, as I said earlier, it's about what the buyer values. And I think the challenge, bringing that back to recruitment, the challenge is to stop worrying about what we think something is worth and to make sure we're confident that we know why our clients value what we do. And in order to do that, you actually have to have a better conversation with them at the start. And again, there are theories and then proven strategies of how to do that, how to present your services in a way that you have that conversation with your clients, you understand more about what they value, and then you agree to deliver it for them, and they're more willing to pay.
Well, give me perhaps some examples perhaps of, let's say you're new in recruitment and this is your, I don't know, second or third month. You're relatively inexperienced maybe in the market sectors you're recruiting for, and you've got terms of business set at a price, but you don't know all the answers. You don't know the market. And you're saying to a client, right, our fees are 20%. Let's go somewhere in the region of 20%. How do you get to a point where you feel confident enough in your pricing to be able to deliver a service when a client is asking what they're going to get for that?
there's actually a really interesting phenomenon. If you plot out across most sales organizations, not just recruitment, if you plot out what people price and how much they discount from their rate card on their terms, it's the newer people who don't discount as much. They haven't learned, they haven't been culturally taught by the organization, and they haven't been beaten down by hundreds of clients saying, I don't want to pay that, I want to pay 10%, 15%, whatever. So actually, often the higher spot business rates are done by a rookie who hasn't yet learned that they should discount. So clients are perfectly capable of paying that, are perfectly willing to pay it, but almost the more experience we get, the more we kind of get beaten down into this mythical
submission.
Submission, exactly. So yes, I'm picking apart your question.
No, that's
pick
good.
on the rookie, pick on the
it's good.
Pick on someone who's been doing it for years and is kind of stuck in a rut.
It's funny, isn't it? We spoke briefly when we had our kind of intro call a couple of weeks ago, and one of the biggest lessons that I've learned was I left an agency where terms were, or pricing was 25, 20 and 18% of salary for a perm placement. And when we opened the new office for a new brand, new region, in a recession, in a hard hit market, we were advised to open at 10%, grab market share, beat the competition to the punch because we're cheaper, we're faster, we can move quickly. And whilst it worked to a degree, and it allowed us to grow the brand and grow a business, the biggest lesson for me was it then took 11 years to get clients back up to the price that we wanted to work towards, which meant a better service and we could spend active time working on it. And the lesson in it for me was it's much easier to negotiate down than it is to negotiate back up.
Yeah. I think the idea of a lost leader or getting a foot in the door through low pricing, just an absolute fallacy. Perfect example you've just given us. It doesn't work. It is incredibly hard to do.
Yeah.
You're setting yourself up, in theory, we don't do it, but in theory, to keep going to your client and saying, now can you pay more? Now can you pay more?
Yeah.
That is the last conversation you want to have. Like, do more of the work up front. Have a slightly more difficult conversation up front, and then you're golden. If over those 11 years, what would you have made if it had been 15% or even 14% or 13%? Just to state the obvious, but if you were at 10% and you were charging 13%, that's 30% more in cash terms.
Which is huge.
So I mean, whoever advised you on the 10%, I think you should go back and the lost earnings.
But it's so true, isn't it? And I think sometimes we're so quick to find perhaps an easier route, and maybe that was seen as the easier route because it removed difficult conversation with clients. I'm of a position now where we run a small recruitment agency. There's only 5 of us, and we can pick the clients we want to work with, the ones that truly value the experience we have and how we work. And we don't need to accept below what we feel the value or the levels are. And actually, you start to enjoy the process better because you feel you get your worth back from dedicating your time to provide a quality recruitment service.
And from a buyer's point of view, there is so much fascinating theory behind this. It's proven in lab experiments and then taken out into real businesses and proven. When people pay more, so in this case, when our clients agree to a higher rate, they expect a better service. And when they're part of that, so when they're getting that service, they value it more. So it's not just that price is a reflection of our value. It's a double-edged thing. The price then reflects back on creates value in a weird way. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's human psychology, which is often pretty out there. But yeah, you really do yourself a disservice. The lower you go, the lower your clients' expectations are, the less they enjoy the service, and the worse they treat you as a supplier. That was really the point.
You become one of the minions, or one of the masses that everybody can supply, and it then becomes a fight. I suppose a fight to the bottom, doesn't it?
You talked about rookies earlier, and I kind of said it's not the rookie's fault. In answer to that question of what should someone who's been in the business 2 or 3 months, to be honest, I don't think it's up to them. I think the responsibility lies with the business owner or the leadership team or the manager to explain to their new staff, to their new consultants, this is how we create value for our clients. You're going to go into this client, they're this type of client, they value certain things from us. We're an important, valued partner to them, or we will be. And this is the rate that we charge. This is what, as an executive team, this is why we've set our rates this way. So I think the change needs to happen at the top in terms of which is why I talk about pricing strategy so much. It's not an individual tactical thing. You can be a better individual negotiator, but really it's for business owners and recruitment leaders to create that confidence, understand their value, and then give that to their team. And the outcome, as you say, is not just better fees. You get a better process, you enjoy the job more. The benefits keep going. You get less staff turnover because your new consultants say, well, I like this. Recruitment's quite a nice job. I don't know what everyone's talking about. In my first year, I'm treated as a partner, I'm getting paid well. You've set them up well.
I remember various scenarios over the years. I remember when we were working somewhere between maybe 10 between 10 and 15%, probably an average client was 12.5, somewhere there and thereabouts. And it'd been that way for a number of years. Obviously, we got a few clients up to the levels that we wanted it to be. Some were still straggling somewhere down the bottom. Some wouldn't work with us because we wouldn't go below 10%. And we took on a consultant that joined us. And they weren't with us for very long, but they were easily one of the best negotiators, and they set their stall out from the very beginning. They came in and opened a new area for us. And when we talked through, well, these are our standard terms, this is what we tend to use when we talk to our clients. And the answer is, well, I'm not working to them. Like, what? No, I'm not working to them. My fees are 30%. I was like, we've never, ever gone close to 30%.
From 12% to 30%.
And I think in the short space of time, they made 3 placements. I'm only talking 3 or 4 months with us. In that short space of time, they made 3 or 4 placements, and they were somewhere between 22.5% and 27.5%. Big fees. But it made me sit there and think, what? How could someone just come in with no other concept other than I value myself up here, so this is what I charge, being perfectly comfortable with it and not accepting less, placing people so they were successful, they were delivering on the promise that they set out to do, and they just set the stall out. And I loved it, to be fair. And it was a bit of a kind of, I think we all become a bit stale at times, and we almost gravitate to the norm, what we've always done, what we're used to doing, what they did in the past, what the business has always done. And you forget actually that you can set new levels. You can decide this is where I'm at.
It's really good. One thing I do when I sit down with a large recruitment agency is look at their data. And when you've got tens of consultants, you can see in the data, not everyone is charging the average percentage. So of course, the agency owner, leader will say, oh, our average price is, but actually you can then look and say, oh, so how come someone's charging 50% more than the average? And often people in the business will say, oh, that's them, or that's their department. It's
Yeah,
like,
they're out there on their own. How they do it, how they get away with it, I don't know.
yeah, it's magic.
Yeah.
There is another option that actually some clients in some situations are willing to pay much more than we
Yeah.
expect.
Yeah.
And so if we can create services, and that's plural,
Yeah.
services that allow those people who are willing to pay much more to work with us and pay us much more,
Yeah.
while also satisfying other parts of the market, then great, let's do that. Let's imagine how often someone who thinks their market is 12%
Yeah.
pitches 12% to someone who says, oh, I happily would have paid 20%.
Yeah.
In fact, money is no object. I would have paid 30%.
Yeah.
But fine, if you say it's 12%, I'll pay 12%.
The art of negotiation, isn't it? I was taught as a buyer that you do as much preparation and you understand the other party. I went on various negotiation training courses, which are brilliant, by the way, and they would film you in a kind of buying negotiation kind of setup meeting at the start, and they record how you react, how you deal with certain questions and scenarios, and then they'd record you 3 days on after the training to see how you've changed and how you managed and dealt with that negotiation. And I learned so much from it. And I think just simply the idea of understanding, we were taught to know the ideal outcome, the realistic outcome, and the walk away point, and having kind of 3, I suppose, thought processes going in, and also understanding perhaps what the other party wanted to get out of the negotiation.
Yeah. And that's really important is, what does the other party value? I think we very quickly just narrow in on price, and a price negotiation is a win-lose negotiation.
Yeah.
One side, the buyer wants it to be as low as possible. If we're just looking at price, the seller, the recruiter, wants it to be as high as possible.
Yeah.
While still winning the business. So someone's going to lose out, and it's most of the time it's us, the recruiters.
Yeah.
But there's so much else going on there. There's so many other things you can trade. And as you were trained, you want to be understanding what other factors there are. Is cash flow a factor? Therefore, do we talk about payment terms and things like that? There's so many other things. Is it they can introduce us into a massive new market or a great new client for free? It costs them nothing.
Yeah.
But they'll do that, and that will open up another 50 grand's worth of business. So let's negotiate, and let's make sure we're getting that as part of the negotiation, rather than it's just like, oh, how high can we go, or how low do we have to go?
Yeah. I've sat in client meetings, scenarios like that, where they'll say, okay, well, what are you going to charge me? We've got people on our PSL and they charge somewhere between 12 and 15%. Well, my natural reaction is 15% is fine. Thanks, Mr. Client. If that falls within the remit of what we were trying to charge, I hear the high point, they're trying to push the low one. I'm naturally thinking, yeah, I can work with that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we lose sight of actually everything else that is part of what we do. It's like the old story of the plumber fixing the pipe, isn't it? And I think sometimes I've had discussions where I've filled roles on the same phone call as registering the vacancy. And the client will say, well, you're not going to charge me full price for that, surely? You're like, well, yes, probably I should be charging you a premium rate even more, because I've done it in the conversation that I'm sat in front of you, and you haven't had to wait 8 weeks for me to go and source someone.
Yeah, how incredible is that? Imagine if they could solve all their problems.
Yeah.
Because it is a problem.
On one phone call.
Yeah. They then need to sell a load of their products. Imagine if they just on one phone call sold a load of their products. They're like, hey, this is great.
Well, and that's it, isn't it? I think it's sometimes, I mean, I truly value the service I deliver to my clients. I know it's a good service. It's, as I say, borderline OCD, process procedural, no stone unturned, and that is just my character trait. But in terms of what I offer, I have managed the same and recruited in the same desk for 17 years. The graduates I placed in 2006 are my clients in 2022.
Yeah.
And I've seen all the bits in between. There's a rate that goes with that service. There's a value, there's a price that comes with that.
And I think you are an extreme, very good example. Yeah, you've had those 17 years. You've also got the books telling people about it. It's like you've got a huge brand. But what's exciting is, with people call it personal branding, don't they? You can build that expertise and that brand on LinkedIn or wherever your clients are now, whether it's through newsletters or other things. We won't get into a cold calling is dead discussion.
I love cold calling. It's certainly not dead.
It's pretty handy, but actually it might not be as cold as it used to be.
That is the key point.
Because if you've got your niche, people in your clients in your niche see you talking, see you acting as an expert. It doesn't have to be a huge expert, just sharing useful stuff. Again, all the personal branding stuff. You go into the negotiation, that client is going to be willing to pay more for you than a cold call. And there's lots, I keep saying willingness to pay. It's a bit of pricing jargon, but it's really handy. People measure that. And if someone is known to them and they say, oh I'd love to work with Steve. Steve is the person we want. The ideal thing, the CEO says, we need to recruit someone, get Steve to do it. The procurement team have no option. They can't negotiate with you, because if you walk away, they've failed. They haven't got Steve, they've got no other options. Whereas if the CEO says, oh, we need to recruit someone, get a recruiter, well, there's 40,000 recruitment agencies. So building that personal brand is the first step in creating that value for the client, so the client is more willing to pay.
I mean, I talk about personal branding a lot because, I mean, you look at the stats for things on places like LinkedIn, where I think only 1% of the 760 odd million active users actually post stuff on their timeline, which is a crazy stat. And if ever you want to do the follow the masses and do the opposite, that's exactly where you should start. But personal branding has huge value. Huge value. And the messages I get are things like, I've followed you for some time, we've never spoke, I've noticed you, I've put you forward to the board, they want to have a chat, can you come and assist us with this, that and the other? My consultants go out to meetings, and the meetings will be, who do you work for? And they say, S-Guest Consultancy. Is that Steve Guest? We've seen him all over LinkedIn. We know you know your stuff. And it all just culminates in value.
And it's we often talk in content terms of creating value for the client. It's got to be useful and interesting, but the big picture, the strategy here is we're making ourselves more valuable in the eyes of the client. That's what we're doing. That's why we're doing it. But we have to then convert that. Don't spend, God knows how many hours we spend on LinkedIn, right? And recording podcasts and everything else. Don't spend all that time and then say, oh I'll match the other agency you worked with last week. It's like, no, that's all been worthless then. There's no point to that personal branding. That personal branding has to have an outcome, and that has to be, great, you've come to me, I therefore know you're willing to pay more. And not just fees. I talked earlier about retainers. You're more willing to accept my terms, which will be my price, but also the way I work. So if I say I will only work with you exclusively, or you have to pay me part of the fee up front, I know you, the client, are more likely to agree. Because you want me. You don't want an engineering recruiter, a marketing recruiter, of which there are thousands.
And I think recruitment's always been like that. I've said it for a long time that even though, if you go back 17 years, everything was more cold call and email based. We even sent out mailers at the time in the post, which was very laborious for our kind of admin support that would be enveloping up 300, 400 mailers on a Friday. But even then, it was about personal branding. I used to have a testimonial folder that I would take to clients to show them who I worked with and who said that I was decent at what I did and found them that next role. The ability to do it now through social media and having an online platform to a much wider audience from one message is far more powerful and more at the fingertips than it's ever been. And I think people don't use it as much as they should, or in the way that they should.
Yeah.
So if I was looking to get you involved with our recruitment business, and we discussed, right, we need to sort out our pricing strategy, and we were to come to you, what would that need to look like? How do you come in and kind of deliver and add value? What things would you look for? What would we need to discuss?
So it's a good question. What things do I look for? The first step is review what you do.
Yeah.
And you've got a few consultants, but obviously lots of agencies have more. First of all, look at your data, but look at it from a pricing lens.
Mm-hmm.
So look at the fees you charge, the discounts you agree, what types of clients, are you discounting more for volume, things like that. And actually, people have lots of anecdotal, they'll say one thing, but to look at the pricing, the prices you've charged, the invoices that have gone out over the last 3 years, that gives you a picture of what
it's a telling sign, isn't it? There's no escape.
Yeah. But I do, I mentioned psychology, and we're a people business. I do like to either focus group surveys to understand the attitudes and the behaviors. It's not all about data. Mm-hmm. Recruitment certainly isn't all about data. So having that data, but also reviewing what people think, and bringing that together creates a really nice picture of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding where you are is really important. Then it's building a pricing model that works for you. And there are a few. There's one I recommend to the majority of recruiters. We could talk about that in a minute. So building that based on where you are now. So understanding what value you currently create, what your current attitudes are to your prices and things. Again, so you don't just like your short-lived colleague from a while ago.
Yeah.
You don't just say, "Good news, everyone, we're now at 30%."
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. You've got to build the service and the value. Yeah. And then creating one thing I'm very passionate about is the negotiation framework. Mm-hmm. So I really think recruiters should be able to negotiate in the moment. Yeah, they're in the room, they're with hopefully the decision maker. They should be able to negotiate, but they should have a framework to negotiate on.
I say because most recruiters are given the autonomy to negotiate for their own desk or business, but very few have the understanding of why or what they're negotiating in the first place.
Exactly. So autonomy, yes, but again, coming back to the leadership need to say, this is what good looks like.
Yeah.
Not just get as much as you can. Or
it's all about the percentage. Yeah.
Find out what the client's willing to pay, which it doesn't mean you can't just ask the client, would you pay 15%? They're not going to say yes.
Yeah.
So actually having that structure, we talked earlier about, well, what are you trading? It's not just price. There's other things there. So come back, use that framework so you can come back from a meeting where with autonomy, you've negotiated and you say, okay, I agree this rate, which is lower than our price, but I got this in return, and this is why I did it.
Yeah.
And I know that's within the framework. I'm happy. My bosses are happy.
Yeah.
It will be a good role. It will be a good, enjoyable process.
Yeah.
And we'll get paid a good fee for it. And then it's interesting, more and more I'm working with people on the rollout.
Okay.
So I've talked about it being a change. Change is hard. I'm sure you, as a business owner,
I don't like change. I'm OCD. Everything has
to change. Absolutely. That is the right human answer.
Yeah.
However, if you want to run a business successfully, it has to change.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. It's really difficult. So actually, rather than just me creating a model and saying, here you go, here's some tips, actually sticking with it and saying, let's make this work.
Yeah.
So in your case, sitting down with you and saying, right, so how is this working? Let's make this happen.
Yeah. And that, I mean, anything that involves change, whether it's on an individual basis or a business with a few consultants or vast amounts of consultants, is difficult.
Yeah.
Because you put lots of people that don't like change in one room, everything can quickly become quite negative.
Yeah. That's why the review is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way I could just go out and say, hey, here's a cookie cutter pricing model, use it.
Yeah.
Zero people would use it.
Yeah.
Running those focus groups, running surveys with consultants and managers, and then playing that back to them, having those conversations and pointing out, right, this is what the data says. This is what your beliefs are in a survey. This is what people said in the focus group. These are real clients and anecdotes you've talked about. And it's persuading people. Yeah, that's how you change. I mentioned earlier in the data, you can sometimes find someone who didn't discount or who charged more.
Yeah.
So again, building that into part of the conversation of saying, look, yeah, the attitude is no client will ever pay more than X. Actually, someone got 30% more than that.
Yeah.
So we've looked into that and we've built that into the model. So making it credible, I guess, following my own logic, justifying why the change is happening, justifying why it will work, giving people confidence in a new way of working.
Yeah.
And then I'm very lucky that what I help people do is work in a way that is more pleasant. It's not harder technology. It's not following a really long script or something. It's using something that, as you said in your example, the client reacts to well, sees the value, pays you more, but also treats you better.
Yeah.
So we all fear change. We've talked about that. But when the outcome is so much more positive, quite quickly, the first time you sell it, you're like, oh, actually, that was not only not that painful, but then the client treated me differently and I liked it.
Yeah.
I'll try that again. So you build that momentum.
Because that instills confidence as well. For me, I think you're more likely to add further value because you genuinely appreciate the relationship better. Yeah.
And I've had quite a few clients of mine, recruiters, recruitment leaders, saying, actually, I'm thinking more about service now. I'm thinking more about value.
Yeah.
What we almost do is create a platform. And then, they're constantly thinking, oh, we could add this, we could do that. It gives them a way to innovate and differentiate what they're doing.
Yeah.
Once they're working in a different way, that helps them communicate and have a conversation with their client about value. Great. Every time the client says, oh, I also value this, you can think, oh, should we add that? Should we include that as part of our model? So you can really keep growing rather than, the alternative is just stuck on a price negotiation.
Yeah.
It's win-lose and we're usually the loser. There's not much innovation there. It's just a slow death kind of thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes as well it's perception. So one of my key clients over the last 2 or 3 years, I'm not on the preferred supply list. Don't agree to the rates that the preferred supply list are on, and yet I've placed more people than the people on the preferred supply list at a higher rate because I'm good at what I do. I understand and know where my value is. We have clients that we've turned away because we don't want to necessarily appeal to the masses, but we also don't want to be competing with 5 plus 10 plus 15 plus agencies on any one particular role, because it's not a good place to spend our time when we have clients that value us and will use us exclusively because they know the level of service. And I think until you get to the point where you're happy to turn clients away and you're happy to say, actually, that's unacceptable, or I can't get to them levels, I'm really sorry, I wish you all the best, good luck with whoever you choose to work with. I think until you get to that point, and there is a point in a recruiter's life where they get to that, and it's not always straight away, that willingness or eagerness to please and say, yes, I can do that, no problem, I'll get to work, mate. Yes, 8%'s fine, 10%'s fine, whatever you want, I'll get it. I'll do that one for free, because it's the first time we've ever done it. Dare anybody say that? But people go through that because in moments of panic, in moments of pressure, in desperation to get that fee on the board, recruiters will sometimes say, yeah, I'll do it because I need a job, I need a vacancy, I need to get some interviews, I need to hit my target. And I think actually standing your ground, knowing where you are, knowing it will come good, and actually proving your worth when you have the opportunity, there comes a time in a recruiter's life when it does happen, and it doesn't happen straight away, in my experience.
I think, sorry to keep coming back to the, it's the business owner, it's the leadership in the recruitment agency.
Yeah.
Let's take an example, based on exactly what you said. You've got a cohort of new consultants. One of them's not doing so well, under pressure, being told you need to get something on. They're a few months in, you need to get something on. So they get an opportunity with a decent sized client in your target market. So I've got to get something on, I've got no guidance on price. I'm not thinking about value, I'm thinking about my own job here.
Yeah.
Great, I'll agree to whatever you say. I'm definitely not walking away.
Yeah.
So you take the job on at 8%. Now, what chance do you, forget the 8% role, do you think that consultant's going to be there in 6 months' time?
No.
Do you think the client's going to be there in 6 months' time?
No.
Sorry, but the client company will still exist.
Yeah.
And you want to work with them because they're in your target market, they're decent size. Some consultant who no longer works for you has set 8% as your rate.
Yeah.
So that's where autonomy doesn't work.
Yeah.
Autonomy without structure, under huge pressure. I don't really blame the new consultant.
No.
You've got to have control of that interaction and what's possible and what's not possible.
Yeah, and offer the training around why it is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's where you come in.
Well, yeah.
So talk to me. I mean, obviously, we've mentioned one name already, so I'm assuming that person will be part of this. But as part of your journey in recruitment, as part of what's inspired you to go it alone and go and do your own thing, who have you held, or who do you kind of have around you that offer you that guidance and support? Who do you find that motivates you? This can be literal, it could be YouTube, it could be people in, I don't know, foreign countries that you follow, or it could be people that you talk to on a daily basis that are next to you.
There's an interesting crossover there. A few years ago now, I started following Greg Savage on his blog when blogging was his main platform. And he was just so generous with his experience. And
it's good, isn't it?
Crazy amounts of detail. I read his book. I forget when that came out, but and he talks about running recruitment businesses, and he talks about the challenges, and he talks about the numbers. He puts the numbers to it, and he puts the names to it. So you really feel like you're there with him. And obviously he's in Australia, so he ticks that virtual international following box. I got to meet him earlier this year. We chatted virtually in lockdown, and he was up in the UK a couple of months ago. And again, really generous, spent some time with me, and we talked about pretty much what I'm interested in, and he talked about it from his angle, still running or investing in all these recruitment businesses, but incredibly generous, but incredibly insightful.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's been on this podcast. He's easily the most downloaded, most listened to, and most watched episode.
Yeah,
he was one of the first to get released back in March 2021. But he's way out there in terms of downloads.
And actually, that generosity and that kind of that interest, it really reflected. You mentioned Sir Alec Reed. My kind of first mentor, learned almost everything about recruitment from him, and that was a really unique angle. They're very similar in that way. They've been there, they've done it, and they're willing to share it. It's not
so important, isn't it?
I think as a kid, I probably thought business was all dog eat dog. No one would help each other. It's all hoarding money and information. But actually, I think the best people, well, you're doing it now, sharing ideas, that generosity, makes everything better.
But you get so much from it as well. I mean, the fact that you've linked me with those two is amazing, and I certainly don't hold myself to that esteem. But
you're getting there. You're getting there.
Yeah, but I get so much value from it from a selfish perspective. Genuinely enjoy having these sorts of discussions, and I think sometimes people miss that. Actually, if you go out to offer value and help and support and give, the amount you get back through those sorts of conversations and through the people that you start to mix with, I don't think you can quantify it.
Yeah. It's funny. So a client asked me the other day, how picky am I with who I work with? And it kind of stumped me as a question, because I was like, I feel like recruiters self-select. So I only talk to good recruiters.
Yeah.
Because they respond to, I'm not in your ballpark or Greg or Sir Alec, but I'm trying to follow that approach.
Yeah.
And other people who are open and interesting come to me, and we have those conversations. And so I see when people are moaning about recruiters on LinkedIn, I'm like, I don't recognize that. No. I'm talking to really innovative, progressive recruiters, recruitment leaders. They don't have all the answers, but they are looking for them. They are talking to people,
and that's it, isn't it? That's
and some of them, and some of them are in the midst of running big recruitment agencies, and sharing their ideas and their challenges on LinkedIn with everyone, with the industry, right?
And I think sometimes it gets missed. I think I come from a background of recruitment where everything was about ring fencing. It was about protection. I'm not sharing my clients. I'm not sharing my candidates. I'm certainly not going to talk to you. I don't care that you work for the same company, regardless of the competition out there. And I've progressed and learned over time that it's about collaboration. It's about sharing. It's about getting people with either common goals or common direction to all push forward. It actually becomes a far more enjoyable journey when you're not trying to fight off everything.
Do you mind? This is going to be really cheesy. I'm going to connect this back to pricing models.
Yeah, do it. That's what this is about.
If you're approaching your clients with that mindset, if you're going to have a conversation around value and you've laid out your services in a way that they prompt a conversation about what your clients value and what you're willing to do, it feels similar. It's enjoyable. You're treated as a partner. You're learning, you're enjoying, your clients learning and enjoying the process as well. Again, you're not fighting against them. I'm sure some people in the world just want to fight people.
Well, it becomes an ego thing sometimes, I think, doesn't it? It's about sticking that chest out and saying, well, I'm going to win this negotiation because you're going to pay what I want to charge you. And that's not what it's about.
Don't fight your colleagues. Don't fight your managers, but don't fight your clients. Like, work with them. And you become a partner. You become a consultant, right?
Which I don't know. Maybe I've just always been that thought process. Maybe because I made the switch from buyer to seller, I get it and I kind of understand it. I understand from the other angle what negotiations are there to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's been really useful. I've led a recruitment career, I suppose, almost selling the fact that I'm a little bit different to your typical recruiter.
Yeah.
And I believe I am. I believe I still am. But I think that comes down to my character traits, my disc profile assessment, and also where I started off in life in my career that gives me a different viewpoint.
I think, sorry, go
on. No, you carry on.
I think having that viewpoint is really important. One of the things I do with a lot of recruiters is look at pricing models that we can use as recruiters that are common in other industries, especially B2C.
Yeah.
So that we recognize them and we understand them because we interact with them.
Yeah.
B2B is a very, very artificial construct, right? And most recruitment consultants aren't ever buying anything.
Yeah.
But as consumers, everyone's buying everything all the time. God knows how many things we buy a day.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about subscription models, let's talk about Netflix. If you want to talk about choice, the power of choice, what coffee cup size do you want? Why do they do that?
Yeah.
There's a reason for it, and we can learn from it, and then we can apply it to recruitment.
Yeah.
How does your mobile phone company put up their bills every year? Yeah, they don't do it on an ad hoc basis.
No.
They have a team, but we experience it as the buyer, albeit a B2C consumer.
Yeah.
But taking that and we experience it, processing it, and then applying it correctly to our businesses.
Yeah.
Means we get that understanding. We get the benefits of those approaches.
So, in terms of where you're at now, you've been running your own business for the last 3 years. So, through COVID, through the pandemic, through the joys and the ups and downs of, oh my God, what's coming around the corner?
Yeah, and then I had baby lockdown. So
okay. God.
after
you
all
had
the
your
other
hands full.
Yeah, so it's been. I keep joking. There's no point having a business plan because something changes every week.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying it. I'm going with it. I'm adding value. As I said earlier, I get to work with really progressive, interesting recruitment leaders.
Yeah.
So it's good. Yeah, I'm going with the flow.
And what's the plan? Do you go around? Do you do kind of events? Do you go in and do workshops or training? Do you work and consult with businesses over a period of time? Is it all of the above and bits in between? How does it work?
Yeah, I do. I guess I have two sides to things. Getting out there. So I was at the Recruitment Agency Expo recently. So those kind of talks, webinars, seminars, podcasts.
Yeah.
That's me kind of opening the door for recruiters to say, look, there is a better way.
Yeah.
There's different things we could do there. I do a little bit of training for certain people, but my main business is the consulting. Okay. So it's going into an agency and saying, right, as I said earlier, let's look at where we are.
Yeah.
Let's look at where we want to get to. Let's build a model or various models that will get us there. And then, as I said, let's make sure we make those models work. Yeah. Make sure we adopt them and we are changing and innovating, and our clients get to see that.
Okay. And if there's listeners that have tuned into this episode and they want to talk further with you in regards to working with you, where's the best place to come and find you? How do they track you down?
I hope a good recruiter should be able to track me down.
There's no escape.
They should be able to find everyone. Yeah. LinkedIn, and I try and share little snippets of value. I want to get people thinking about pricing in a different way. Yeah. So I try and share things there. If you're interested in going deeper, then I have an email list, and I regularly send out articles, ideas, kind of inspiration on it's almost like the new blogging, right?
Yeah.
Kind of that level of detail, I guess, following in Greg Savage's footsteps of like, let's get those concepts out there.
Yeah.
So definitely sign up to that. Again, the details are on my LinkedIn. And then, if you want to work with me, come and talk to me.
Fantastic. And there's a question that I always ask at the end of the podcast episodes. If there was one single piece of advice that you would leave the listeners with, what would that be?
Too many to choose. From what we've talked about today, I think it's get yourself to a place where you're confident in the value that you're creating in your clients. And that means understanding what your clients value and making sure you are providing that value for them.
Yeah. Great advice. Jon, it's been an absolute pleasure.
No, great to join you, Steve.
Thank you.